the hour, Fox News alert. Pigs are flying, actually, today because Lindsey Graham is supporting Ted Cruz for president. Yep. Tony Sayegh, Fox News contributors here. Bernard Whitman, former Bill Clinton pollster and CEO of Whitman Insight Strategies, is also here. So pigs do fly, Tony, because it wasn't that long ago that Lindsey Graham said never, never, never would anybody support Ted Cruz, especially other senators, and now he is.
Yeah, this is the my enemy's enemy is my friend strategy in full effect. And you're going to see a lot more of this, Gretchen. You even have one of the Bush brothers who's supporting Ted Cruz, joining his finance committee. And that's largely because this anybody but Trump movement has decided to consolidate largely behind Ted Cruz as the only viable one to stop Trump, or at least deprive him of that threshold of 1,237 delegates in this primary process. So this is what you're saying.
Bernard?
Sadly for the Republicans, it is way too little, way too late. Donald Trump is going to be the nominee of the party. They better get used to it, and they better get used to the fact that 54% of the American public, likely voters, say they would never vote for Donald Trump. A third of Republicans say they'd never vote for Donald Trump. I think that the Republicans have a chance not only of going into a catastrophic loss. He's down by 13 points against Hillary Clinton right now, but also probably will lose the Senate. Just ask Laura Bush, as a USA Today interviewer did yesterday, are you going to vote for Donald Trump if he's the nominee? And she said, don't ask that.
Oh, very interesting. But here's my analysis a little bit on this, Tony, is that if Donald Trump's a nominee, he hasn't had a chance to go after Hillary Clinton, and for that matter, Bill Clinton yet. And all signs show that he's going to do it with the same force or even more than he went after other Republican candidates. So could that change how voters see him? Sure. You know, could his popularity rise after that? And
the one time he did give the Clintons the full Trump treatment, they receded. They actually went back from their arguments against him. Look, Bernard is making the same exact mistake that we have just seen for 6 months, the Republican establishment and the entire media establishment make about Donald Trump. They think this is all zero sum, not you. But I give you a lot more credit than that, Gretchen. It's not zero sum. Trump expands the base of voters turning out. We see the enthusiasm across the board. In some states, 100% turnout increases because of largely Donald Trump's participation in states like Virginia and Florida. Ohio, this past week, 48% decrease in Democrat outcome.
Yep. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there right now, and then I'm going to get Bernard in. So, as Tony just said, voter turnout was a huge factor. 42% drop for Democrats so far this year in primaries. That's compared to 2008. There it is on your screen. Republican turnout is up 40% from 2012. And then in Ohio, as you were saying, Tony, Dem turnout down 46%. It was up 69% for Republicans. How do you get around that, Bernard?
If the measure of enthusiasm is how many people come out and vote, Hillary Clinton is killing it. 8.6 million people have voted so far for Hillary Clinton, more than any other candidate in this cycle. More than 1 million more people have voted for Hillary than have voted for Donald Trump. 2.5 million more than voted for Bernie Sanders. So I think
Hillary has one opponent. Trump has 10 up until recently.
What? This race,
doesn't he have a great point?
No, because in 2008, Barack Obama never had the delegate lead that Hillary Clinton has over Bernie Sanders. And in fact, in 2008, that was a very competitive race. On the Democrat side, it's not that competitive. It is not that competitive. The real competition is in the Republican side.
Doesn't Bernie Sanders need to stay in the race in case Hillary Clinton's indicted?
That's hilariously funny because it's never going to happen.
Bernard,
why is that hilariously funny?
You can say it's not going to happen.
It's never going to happen. It's an absurd
There's new information that just came out today.
This is called the Republicans' wet dream. I'm sorry to say that, but it absolutely is.
Whoa.
I won't comment on that, but I will say it's also the source of 2 FBI criminal investigations into your candidate. So you could say it might not happen in your analysis. You can't call it hilarious to suggest that the larger problem for Hillary is she's not cultivating the Obama coalition. David Plouffe made this point, the former Obama campaign manager, the other night. She is not enthusing even African-American voters while winning them at the same rates, young voters, Hispanic voters like Obama did.
She is off 80% of African-American voters in South Carolina and Mississippi in recent weeks, Bernard. She's seen her black support in other states drop by about 10 percentage points. No, wait. Since her 80% take of African-American voters in those 2 states, she's gone down 10%.
She's getting 70% of the African-American vote. That's pretty darn good in my book.
Yeah, but she's losing millennials dramatically, and that's a huge part. And also younger voters under 45. I'd like to say I'm in that category.
She's got to engage younger voters, but the truth is older voters vote.
The FBI doesn't think the investigation into her email server is hilarious because they wouldn't be wasting all this time on it if it was hilarious.
The idea she's going to get indicted is absurd.
Okay. Absurd or hilarious. We'll see how it turns out, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Folks, Fox News alert for you now because Senator Marco Rubio speaking just moments ago, he went back to the Senate today saying he's not interested in even becoming vice president right now. Tony Sayegh, Fox News contributors back. Bernard Whitman, former Bill Clinton pollster, back as well. Okay, let's listen to Marco.
So, but I don't have anything further to elaborate on and I don't have anything to announce today.
But what about Kasich? Do you have any issues? Is he not conservative enough?
I like Governor Kasich. That was my opinion.
Do you think it's time, though, for Republicans to coalesce around one of the two candidates left in the race that's not Donald Trump to be able to stop him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to happen now that the race is narrowed even further, and hopefully there's time to still, prevent a Trump nomination, which I think would fracture the party and be damaging to the conservative movement.
Would you consider being Cruz's vice president at any type of?
I'm not going to be anybody's vice president. I'm not interested in being vice president. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm not going to be vice president. I'm not running for governor of Florida. I'm going to finish out my term in the Senate over the next 10 months. We're going to work really hard here, and we have some things we want to achieve, and then I'll be a private citizen in January.
And you're not going to rethink this and go back?
Okay, so Tony and Bernard are back. Tony, you first. What do you make of it?
Well, look, we just discussed in the last segment, you're going to see a consolidation of support behind Ted Cruz as the likely most electable non-Trump in the race. In the case of Marco Rubio, a lot's been misunderstood about him. He was put in the establishment bucket, but Rubio was really part of the Tea Party movement. He's a movement conservative, not necessarily the traditional conservative associated with the Republican leadership. So I'm actually not that surprised that he would make such a move. And there is a battle, Gretchen, and this is a very profound one, for the heart and soul of the Republican Party. You have movement conservatives lining up against the populist secularists that Trump seems to be representing. They have to somehow bridge that together during the convention, or else we're going to be in big trouble in November.
Okay, Bernard, we also heard him say that he's not interested in being Cruz's VP. Why do candidates say that all the time? John Kasich has said that too. I mean, VP's still a pretty darn good job.
I mean, the last thing you want to do after getting trounced and tossed out of the race is sort of appear to be pandering to become a vice president on a ticket. And I think, frankly, if Cruz does have the great fortune to get the nomination, which I think is highly doubtful, a Cruz pick would be a very, very bad choice. I think Ted Cruz, I think Marco Rubio probably said the smartest thing that I've ever heard him say, talking about how Donald Trump will likely fracture the party. And I think what you're hearing is the last gasp before the Republican Party ultimately implodes in the wake of Donald Trump's nomination.
Okay, let's listen to Marco Rubio. He had some other comments about rioting potentially at the convention.
What do you make of Donald Trump's comments that he might incite a riot if they try to take the nomination away from him?
I mean, at this point, it's like daily occurrence, of stuff that he says. There isn't going to be any riots. It's a very unusual political year. People are going to write books about this year, right? There's going to be a lot of political scholarship on what exactly is happening, but I don't think riots are going to be a part of it.
Will you read a book?
Well, that's certainly true. There's going to be a lot of writing. I just did my take on the fact that Super PAC money doesn't seem to matter anymore, for gosh sakes.
Sure.
So what do you make of always having to be asked, though, the Trump questions?
Well, look, he's the biggest character in the room. Gretchen, this is someone who, to your point, has barely spent any money on paid media, even though he could, and has gotten the outsized share of earned media attention. In fact, there was one survey that showed he's getting more earned media than all of his opponents combined. I want to disagree with something Bernard says. There's this kind of glee on the left that the Republican Party is imploding. I don't think we're imploding. We're growing. And there's growing pains. We're beginning to encapsulate that large center in this country, the populist center, that isn't necessarily attached the way some of us may be to the conservative movement, but share our beliefs.
Independents and former Democrats. And Bernard, whatever you say, you got to be nervous about that.
I think that running against Donald Trump will be very difficult because he's so unpredictable. You never know what he's going to say. Your party is growing like you grow a second head. Sounds like it would be interesting, but a little hard to manage. And one little known fact that I just dug up the other day, you know who Donald Trump is actually attracting to the party or attracting to the voting polls?
What?
Naturalization applications have gone up 15%, largely among Latinos who are literally registering to become U.S. citizens so they can vote against Trump in the general election.
Democrats are switching in record numbers to the Republican Party in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Massachusetts. That should make people like Bernard
Donald Trump.
No, but in those states, Democrats should be nervous because they always tend to go Democratic. Okay, before I let you guys go, let's talk about the delegates of Marco Rubio. Not sure if he got that question or not in the press conference, but that would be the first question if I had been there, because does he have control over these delegates, Tony, to make a difference in who's the nominee?
Yeah, at this point, I believe he still has the power to hold on to them and not release them till after the first ballot in in the convention. If that's the case, it's likely that these 180 plus delegates will go to the non-Trump on a second ballot if it gets that far. But this delegate math is so interesting, Gretchen, because Trump does have a roadway to still win this outright.
Right.
But the more and more, you have this bifurcation of delegates away from him, the harder it becomes.
Okay, there's no way, do you believe, Bernard, and Tony too, that the Republicans would take away the nomination from Donald Trump if he gets to 1237?
I think that nothing is impossible this year. And I think when Donald Trump starts threatening about riots, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to gin people up, get people scared, make people very, very afraid of what's going to happen in Cleveland. I tell you, Cleveland is going to be a raucous time.
Will they take it away from him?
No, they absolutely will not. Absolutely will not.
All right. Fantastic. Good to see both of you for two times today. Okay?
We got double lucky.